Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Scientific Wellness Keynote series on weight management using science. I'm your host, Dr. Yi Sherry Zhang. Our program is presented by GenoPalate. I'm so happy seeing all of you joining us live at the end of the year. I know it's a busy time, so I really appreciate you. And for the people who have come last time, we started series from November 15th. Welcome back. And for people who are new today, I'm really glad you are here. We have a content and action-packed program just like always. So I would like to dive in if you're ready. Sounds good. Feel free to put your comment in our chats if you have any comments or issues. I have some slide I would like to use as our visual presentation. Okay, can everybody see that? Perfect. So we can go to the next one. And a little bit about myself. Lots of you already know me. Just in case, I am a trained biologist with a PhD in molecular biology, studied obesity and metabolic syndrome using genomics technologies from genome sequencing, proteomics, RNA sequencing, you name it. Happily researched this topic, very important topic, and topic of our series here today for over a decade. And, you know, being a professor, teach and research, creating new knowledge before the world knows and publish it is really my passion. My pedigree, so to speak, as a scientist is very fortunate. I was studying obesity under the person who coined the metabolic syndrome clinical definition for our society, under Dr. Ahmed Kasiba. We are decades of NIH-supported, funded group studying this important clinical, etiology condition for us. And I was publishing a lot of pioneering work in nature genetics and epigenetics, sharing my understanding, our evidence about how do we respond from our gene pool to the environment we live in. Epigenomics is something I'm very passionate about. On top of the genomics, they're really an integral system. We're going to talk about that down the line, I'm sure. It's really the conduit between the gene and the environment for expression. So my passion is creating knowledge and sharing knowledge, including what we're doing today. My day job, which I'm responsible for, is being a good mother to this young gentleman I'm bringing up, my son, being the house caretaker of our beloved one. I think it's something we all do in our life. So I think weight issues is really on top of everybody's mind, and as they should be. It should be. It's really a very costly from health and wealth perspective for our for public health, our society. It's a global issue too. So because of that, we're dedicating our first program because there's so much we need to cover and so much we need to talk about, lots of evidence, a lot of opinions. So we really tailored into this 4 parts program, and it's dedicated for effective management. So you and us can learn more together and then become more successful, less frustrated when we talk about managing our weight for health. And the last time, if you joined us or you saw the replay we shared after, we talk about what's the effect of aging onto your energy and weight management. We talk a lot about something called mitochondria or health. And we're going to review a little bit of that just after this slide. Today is the effects of genes on your weight management. And in a few weeks and after New Year, we're going to talk about very interesting topic, and it's about your biological clock, circadian rhythms. Sometimes people refer to that way, on our energy homeostasis and weight dynamics. And then the last part of the series is going to be talking about how does your stress level, your environment that induce your stress level in your body, how does that play a role in your weight management? And I want to keep reminding ourselves that we are building a new community. We want it to be inspiring, engaging, and safe, because we're going to talk about sensitive topics. We're talking about appearance, we're talking about feelings, we're talking about weight and health. So I wanted to encourage you to bring your open-mindedness and also willingness to participate in our conversation, and put your hat, a scientist hat on as myself, looking at the data, agree to disagree if there are opinions involved. Okay. What did we learn last time? We learned that aging is important. It's a journey where everybody starts from day one when we entered into this life. And it's going to be forever flow as a river, right? When we talk about health and wellness. And when we talk about weight, when we talk about, metabolic health in general, I want to show the evidence and encourage you to always think about your weight issues, yourself, your body needs in the context of aging. Because without that, I think we're missing a big fundamental perspective to the whole puzzle. And there's a lot of new advancements in aging research. We have shared the new theory about 12, and a lot of evidence supporting those 12 hallmarks of aging. And if you need to review that and go back to the materials we shared. And we know the aging process dictates how effective your energy homeostasis, your weight, your fatness, lean mass dynamics when you go through your course of life. And we also had an engaging conversation through a poll that we all have this observation, 90% of us, right? Some people don't recognize it. That's totally normal, that we notice from 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, all of a sudden our body have this fundamental shift towards less energetic, less efficient of using the same energy we put into our body, right? That's the fundamental difference. Shifts is lots of them are caused by the energy powerhouse, which is the mitochondria in our skeletal muscles, and all sorts of organs start to declining because they are aging too. And recent quantitative analysis showed every decade the functionality of our mitochondria are going to decline by 8%, right? So you can do the math, and by the time we reach 50, 60 years old, that number, that declining rate is actually going to speed up to about 1% decline per year. And it's happening, to all of us and every day. But there's the things that we can do to slow it down, to even maintain pretty steady rates as a very healthy mitochondrial health, so that you feel the same level of efficiency and effectiveness in weight and energy management. So we suggest, we recommend a training routine. We give you an example, but you can expand from that point. We shared Frankie as our sports nutrition expert, and shared after our webinar live session a nice, I believe it's a one-pager showing you how to conduct a regular strength training, which we know gonna increase the volume of your skeletal muscles, depends on where you train your muscles, and also the mitochondria are gonna naturally grow with the increased volume. So next time when I hate doing muscle training, but now I have a better reason to do that. And I think it's very, very good for motivation. And then secondly, without the nutrition, just like us as a body, mitochondria cannot thrive and grow. So we have some tips for you to feed directly into the components of the mitochondria. And if you haven't seen those information for any reasons, feel free to put your information, if you want them, put your information, email, names into the chat. We're happy to send them to you again after, okay? We had a very engaging Q&A, short Q&A last time. I hope today we'll have a little bit more time for those. I wanted to highlight one of the good questions I got. This one is from Sherilyn, and she listened to all the evidence we shared and opinions we shared, and she asked a very intelligent question, is because I think she saw the pictures, which I will review in a minute, that why as we age, there's a fat on the outside of a mitochondria in the skeletal muscle bundles, and why they're increasing, and why is that happening? It's a great question, Charlene, if you're attending today. So this is the evidence we reviewed together, right? So on the top of the 3 pictures, we're talking about in lean people, which is on the left side of the picture on the top, versus the older and obese individuals. This is a biopsy of their muscles. So naturally, for Charlotte's information or question, the lipids inside of the bundle and the outside of the muscles cells, which we can see on the electronic picture below that, the lipids are naturally there for our use when we exercise. We need the lipids, we need the storage of energy when we exert our muscle and do the jobs. So they're natural, they're always there. But when you compare the young individual with the older individuals, you will see there's much more increased volumes of those outer, the outside of the bundle. These lipids droplets, they're huge compared to the cellular size, and this individual is also obese, so we have overaccumulation of those fatty acids, really. So it's more abundant energy sources or storage than necessary. You also see between the bundles, you see the more density of those yellow colored lipids droplets. So that's really the difference. So we need the lipids there, but otherwise you can't do the muscle jobs. But when there's too much, and when it's declining the functionality of the mitochondria and also the muscle malfunction over time, over aging, that become a problematic situation. And on the right side, just quickly, when you look at compared to the young, which is the white bar, compared to the black bar, which is the older, this is 20 years old versus 70 years old range of individuals who are actually well and exercise regularly, you'll see the huge decline of the quantity of the mitochondria of their muscular skeletal muscles, skeletal muscles cells. Okay, makes sense? All right. What about today? We have a very exciting program on genetics, and then for our weight management, As usual, we're gonna discuss the latest evidence, the knowledge, opinions, formulated on those evidence, on those factors to do with food, nutrition, genetics, and weight issues. And I'm very excited that we have a precision medicine expert, Dr. Hector Gillen, to join us to have a discussion with me, to especially focusing on how do we apply the knowledge to our success. And then we're gonna do a recap, and hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A, and then we're gonna quickly announce what's next and what's coming. All right, I'm gonna start with a fundamental question here. The question that I'm gonna ask all of us, if you want to share your opinion, is true or false? Do you think the obesity epidemic has little to do with humans' genetics, mostly a result of human behaviors? True or false? So if you can see the poll, please put in your point of view. It should be on the right side of your dashboard if you can find it. Okay, we give a minute. Is genetics play very trivial or little influence of our current obesity epidemic or pandemic because it's global, or and mostly is human behaviors or not? Okay. All right, I'm gonna publish the opinions. My data point is not here, by the way, but I want to share what you think as a intellectual group here. So 40% of us think it's false. You think it's false. To me, that means genetics play more than little, right, to do with the obesity epidemic we're experiencing as a humanity. And 60% think it's true. Okay, very interesting. I would like to ask you keep that on the top of your mind as we dive into the existing knowledge and evidence, and we will come back to this point of view and have a discussion as a team. Okay. Perfect. Now, I want to take you back one step a little bit and talk about your fantastic DNA and genome for a second, because it's very important to understand all these fundamentals before we dive into more complex situational evaluation. I think everybody has a story. That story has 3 chapters. There's a past and your present and your future. Food that you're eating, drink, a little bit lifestyle, they actually have made your past through your ancestry. It's still editing your presence, and it will continue influencing your future. So we're not talking about novel, all right? We're talking about your genomic book, code book. It is about precisely each of us has 3.2 billion letters in each of your cells. Some cells don't have nuclear, but very, very few, like red blood cells. But most of our cells have that 3.2 billion precisely made code book. I always say that's almost like a user's manual for our health. You were born with it. And a page of your book look just like this, right? There's a lot of ATGC, and then they lined up, and looks black and white, very plain. But even after so many decades studying genomics and health, I'm still fascinated. Every time I think about this is how could this black and white code be translated to so interesting and so complex, life forms like ourselves, right? Animals and stuff. So it's a really interesting phenomenon that we're living in. And when the 2002, our first reference of a fully sequenced genome was available, the Society of Scientists in the Genomics printed one copy of one individual's genome that made 130 volumes of books, literally a library from that one person's genomic information. In fine print, they printed it in 4.5 size. So it's a lot of information. And if I take one of you, if I may take the DNA from your cells, all of your cells, which is about 28 trillions for women on average, and 32 for men, because the sizes of our body in on average. If I take all the DNA from out of you and then I line them up, the length will be long enough to make 7 round trips between the Earth and the sun and back. That's amazing, right? So it's a lot of big data. We're all carriers of big data. So all this big data needs to packed into our small cells that we cannot even see them without microscope. So how do they do that? We have to be very structured and very organized. And then all this information that we can print out are packed into 23 chromosomes, depends on your gender. And then we have 2 copies. Each of you have 2 copies of those. One copy is from your mother, and the other one is from your father. And then when in certain unfortunate development situation where, for example, trisomy 21, if some of you may probably seen that in reality, what happens is these are the Down syndrome patients or individuals. These are people, instead of having 2 copies of the 21 chromosomes, they have 3 copies. So those will be the extreme scenarios where when genetic information is produced in a different way than regular, and disease state will happen. And all of us have variations in all sorts of genes. The genes tells our cells to make proteins, and then proteins, enzymes, hormones, and you name it, and made us, and also our biological traits. So, for example, on our chromosome 15, the gene, a version of the HER2 genes of yours will determine whether you have brown eyes or blue eyes. And we have found on chromosome 1 and 3 have multiple genes will determine how sensitive you are to sweet. The sweetness, the sugar level in your cake or your Coke. And then there's multiple genes have been identified to do with the sensitivity of your taste profile to saltiness. And we also have a connection of that genetic variation with hypertension, high blood pressure. Bitterness is very complex, turned out to be. There's a big family, cluster of them located on our chromosome 7, and determining how you prefer more or less bitterness. And that will profoundly affect your preference for certain foods. For example, people hate certain leafy greens because they are more sensitive to the bitterness. And as a food behavior, that may translate to they will always shy away from vegetables in general, right? Now, umami is a very interesting flavor. It's the latest, the most recent new flavor, so to speak, we identified. But all the smart chefs now use umami to craft a very tasteful dishes, right? At a restaurant where you probably use mushrooms and chicken at home. It's actually very interesting genetic factor behind this, and multiple loci, as I showed here by the red bars on our chromosome map, that we developed this genetic capacity to detect the nutritional values in foods through those umami flavor genes, because when we talk about survival, our taste bud will sense the broken down proteins and meats, which usually indicate energy dense foods for survival. So that's why umami gives this highly satisfied feel and to our brain. So those are just some interesting food-related, taste-related, eating behavior-related genetic variants we can talk about all day long. And we have really begun with our technology availability for tapping into the sequencing, the sequence of our genomes and the variation to do with your traits, that we can start to build out this roadmap, this map of how is our nutritional genetic factors is affecting and effecting on our nutrition and healthy and eating and then health outcomes such as weight and hypertension. And more importantly, how can we leverage that insights to help all of us eat uniquely for our own health, not everybody's else bodies, and stay successful. And then we probably have heard or I've heard other people talk about you are what you eat, and that's really true. And we have a scientific evidence to support this claim. And not only you are what you eat, we have transgenerational evidence through epigenomics study showing you are actually what your grandma eats. That's another really interesting story for another time. And today we'll stay on your life and our long history of our genomic evolution. So how has food influenced our genetics? Are we talking about if you eat broccoli today and fries, that affecting our genetics? It's not that quite simple. So in order to give you the full picture, let's travel back in time a little bit here, okay? So really look at how we evolve in the context of food. So about 50,000 years ago, our ancestors, genetic ancestors, the modern humans left Africa to occupy other continents. And during about that time, it's estimated the whole human species has a population equals to 250,000 to 250,000 individuals, humans. That's all we have. A lot of resources available, obviously. But so it's not a big gene pool. That's a problem for evolution, because for every mutation, which is happening naturally from one generation to the next, right? From your upper generations, from your mother and father, you will carry mutation naturally happen. A lot of them are benign. A lot of them are not changing anything. And then from you to your next generation, mutations happen also. Those are naturally happening phenomena at the genetic level. But when a beneficial genetic factor happens or genetic mutation happens, usually increasing your level of survival in all sorts of ways. We'll dive into some of them. When it happened, when your gene pool is so small and then the concentration population is so loose, it will take literally thousands of generations for one beneficial mutation to precipitate, meaning survive and spread out. So it's a long time for one mutation to happen because the gene pool is small, right? Follow me? And so that's one issue. But we evolve anyway. Between 100,000 years to 10,000 years ago, humans became more creative. We started to learn how to use fire and make tools, as we all know. And we became a creative, and then the genes evolved so that we developed a bigger skull size of our brain, and then the speech gene also developed. From that point, people can communicate, right? When you have speech genes, and people become far more innovative when they have those new gene factors and gene features. People became much more better at hunting because those are more complex situations than foraging, right? Just pick a fruits and off the tree, why not? So people become a better analyzer of the situation. They will be better thinker. They will take bigger risks in the complex situation, like hunting a buffalo, for example. And then they can predict the outcomes much better, right? So all sounds like innovators' traits to me. So all these are helpful. And then, it's kind of a feedback loop. You develop bigger brains, you can communicate, you survive better, your tribe is stronger, and so on and so forth. So with that, so back out a little bit. So between 10,000 years to so during that time, we evolved from a 250,000 population to 60 million. Now we have a much bigger gene pool to foster those beneficial genetic variants we talked about, right, earlier. So these will precipitate much quicker. We're talking about hundreds of years still, but it's much better than thousands of generations, right? So once a beneficial mutation sit in and then make the tribe survive better, more creative, more successful, more competitive, and they will spread it out. And eventually through, generations of marriage and so on, they will become a staple, new novel genetic factor. That's how we evolve. But it takes a lot of time to do that. And today, this is exactly the fundamental of our core technologies for nutritional genomics. If I sequence any of you and compare with mine, we're gonna detect along the line of 3 to 5 million of those mutations, differences between a pair of genomes. Those are the millions of mutations are the results of the evolutionary changes I just talked about. And a lot of them are to do with the food environment our ancestors were exposed to. So long story short, or fast forward, I should say, and 15,000 years ago, the last ice age ended. Our environment, the planet Earth, became wetter and warmer. And then that really fostered one of the most impactful cultural revolution of human history. And as I already showed here, that is agriculture. So agriculture started in certain areas, about 4 regions of on Earth, starting from there's Eastern Africa, there's Asia. I think it started first with Middle East, and then Eastern Africa, Asia, and European. We developed agriculture. Agriculture accelerated our human genetic and cultural revolution by hundreds of times. It's not only change our food and nutrition environment, actually will also change our culture in a way that, as I said before, the tribes are more innovative and creative based on genes, and also their how do they apply the agriculture technology, so have more energy available. They will become more competitive, more successful than the other tribes are. They are not as innovative. And animals, when we domesticate animals, new infectious diseases happen. They used to be contained within animal body, but now they transmitted to humans. So humans have to develop new adaptation mechanism to handle those. The recent examples will be bird flu, HIV, and COVID. These are all the result from the close proximity from animal to human species for infectious diseases. This won't happen until we become stationary and also concentrated living style. Now, the stationary lifestyle completely changed the classification structure of our society, because that's the only reason we can have accumulation of wealth and elite classes, because before that we are mobile foragers. We're not gonna have an infrastructure or the system to develop that. So agriculture changed a lot of things, genes and our culture and everything in between. Fascinating, right? So let's take a look of take a closer look of one of the case and a model system where a new food introduced by us as a human species changed completely our genetics and affecting billions of people, all the people literally living on Earth today. So the gene expression of the gene lactase, which is the enzyme enables a baby to take advantage of the high energy from the sugar in the milk from the breast milk of the mother. And that genes will be turned off when the breastfeeding is soon after the breastfeeding is over, because our biology is engineered so smartly that everything is not going to be turned on, or it will be turned off when we don't need that. It's like a perfect energy efficiency program. When we don't, just like when you leave a room and you turn, if you're good, you turn the light off when you don't need it. So we have lots of biological mechanism use a lot of those in our gene expression. So lactase is one of those cases. Now, when agriculture happens, so about 3,000 years into cattle farming, which happens in certain regions, right? So there's Eastern Africa and there's European regions, but not so much in Asian regions where I grew up. So in 3,000 years into cattle farming, those tribes, so to speak, developed a natural mutation in the lactase gene region, so that adults can have the lactase gene turned on all the time, just like one of those housekeeping genes to keep us alive, like mitochondrial genes. So when that happens, it's the reason that happens because you can take advantage of the milk from the cattle, which is about 70% of more energy than without. So those are survival benefits or advantage for those people have that mutation. So that mutation over, as I explained, over generations, they precipitate and they spread out because they're supposed to be more successful humans. Versus, as I said, fortunately or unfortunately, my ancestors never needed to develop that because they have been living on rice. And I grew up with rice. But when I decided to move here, pursuing a life here, a career and a life here, I got exposed to fantastic dairy because I'm living in the heartland of America. I love all the cheese, but I couldn't necessarily enjoy them as other people, my Caucasian husband or friends are, because I never had that mutation in my gene pool. I still have the wild type, which is a bummer for me. But I think that really speaks to everybody's struggle, right? There's no bad genes. I heard a lot like, oh, I blame on my genes. I said, don't blame on your genes. We have a fantastic gene pool. It's so smart. It's there for millions of years to make our species so successful and adaptable. I think what's bad is the situation we created by ourselves, right? The sedentary, a lot of sugar, too much salt, very hypertensive, very obesogenic. But that can be reversed. It can be changed. I think our genes is something we should be proud of. It let us survive, it let us thrive in a lot of different nuanced environments. But I think the food environment is where it's a situational problem which we can change. All right, thank you for bear with me with that history, and hope you enjoy as much as I enjoy the evolution of fascinating of our genome. So it makes sense, right? It makes sense. Now we understand why. But the problem we're facing together is huge. Last time we talked about a lot of CDC's, long-term data and stats about obesity prevalence. I'm not going to repeat that, but all in all, 2 out of the 3 American adults today are either with overweight issues or obesity. 1 out of 3 children or adolescents in this country is also in that situation. So we really need to do our share to help change that. Now let's come back to this question I asked all of us to think about for how much is the obesity phenomenon in the at the person level all the way to society level has to do with the genetic component, right? So I hope you agree with me based on the evidence and knowledge we just talked about and review that the genetic factor for obesity is the fundamental background, right? We have this this is what we start with, all of us. And when we are put in different scenario, the obesogenic environment, which is everybody exposed to, our gene pool depends on where you came from. Your nuanced ancestry will make you more or less susceptible to this environment, right? So there's a very robust scientific way to measure exactly that, is for each trait, how much of the trait outcomes among people, among varied people, is determined by genetic factor versus environmental ones. So for obesity, we have long known it's about 40% to 70%. And then recently, there's a really nice a study, compiling all these evidence together, looking at a more nuanced aspect of BMI, body mass index, as we talk about. It's obesity diagnostic screening tool. When you look at different BMI range, the heritability also goes up as your BMI goes up. So normal weight is about, shown on this picture, is about between 30% to 40%, and then overweight will be above 40, obese population range, the heritability level, meaning the genetic determination, will be more, and the severe obese will be even higher. Happy to discuss more, and we will. So in the next few slides, what I want to take you into a gene story with me. I want to introduce this monogenic versus polygenic obesity models, which we understand quite a bit. So there's certain people, they are born with monogenic obesity mutation. These are also, depends on how many alleles. They may have 1, 0, or 2 alleles of those risky mutation we talk about. When it comes to obesity, these children, infants, will be born with those monogenic, will manifest those traits such as obesity or obesity-related traits very early on. So these are monogenic form of obesity that usually show up very early in a life course. So this early onset obesity. I want to discuss one, which is the most common monogenic obesity model. It's caused by a mutation at the gene location, which makes the melanocortin 4 receptor. So melanocortin is a very important neuropeptide hormone that our brain, secondary neurons, will take the signal from the primary neurons in our brain, and the melanocortin will transmit the signals and affect our appetite. So that's what the MC4 is doing, and the MC4R is the receptor. These are the structured proteins located on the membrane, so that when the melanocortin, which is a hormone molecule, activate these receptors, will trigger the downstream events. I think we have a lot to go through, so I will just go through quickly here, and I will share all this asset after, as we did before. So as you see on this picture, there's 2 young gentlemen. We were showing 2 children on this panel C. These are 2 brothers. So genetically, they're shared by at least half, and environmentally, they share 100%. They share the biological parents and their environment. The kid on the left, he is 9 years old, and they're matched so it's proportionally matched. On the right side is his brother, who is 16 years old, which is normal BMI, normal height. But you can see the young gentleman on the left, the 9 years old kid, is much bigger, right? Obese, taller, bigger bones. So that's what the MC4R, he's diagnosed with MC4R mutation. That's the monogenic early onset model that we are observing here. So a little bit on the MC4R, it's functional in your brain. It's very important it locate functions in the hypothalamus. We know when the receptor activity is reduced, there's a cascade of events happen. It can screw up at different steps of the cascade, but eventually when you have reduced activity, in this case, genetically involved, you will have increased the food intake. So in that young gentleman I showed you, he would express hyperphagia. He just cannot satisfy with food enough. He's eating all the time. And then there's a drug for that. It's actually related to the recently popular weight loss drug, the GLP-1. And there's a treatment to target this pathway with that. And then there's a picture showing you when we're deprived of the leptin level comes down. Leptin is a hormone that's sensing from our adipose tissue. So our fat storage will say, oh, my body is deprived of food, I need to eat. Or you're fasting, your leptin will come down naturally. And then the leptin signaling will happen on the right side of this picture, work on this pump C, and then, start to trigger the stop eating signals through MC4R. In this picture, you see the red ball comes out. It will block the signaling for increase our appetite. So low leptin, we will start to eat more. But when the MC4R is reduced, this part is either not working as sensitive as they should be, or completely out of line. And then we'll continue to have this feeling of feeding. We need to eat all the time. At least we feel we need to eat all the time. Now, this is a picture of my MC4R genotype. This is not the monogenic model. I don't have the early onset mutation, but I do have a complex contributing mutation or genotype at this locus around the genes, affecting its expression level. That's what we believe that's what's happening. I have a CT heterozygous. C is from one of my parents. T is from, probably one is from mother, one is father. So 36% of the population shares my particular heterozygous CT genotype for these genes. And this mutation has been linked to disrupted regulation of hunger signals and energy balance, and also dopamine signaling. As a result of behavior, as a symptom, I'm more likely to eat when stressed, and I can attest to that. So this is an example where when I know I'm have higher tendency to eat when I'm stressed, especially when I experience that in reality over and over again, now I know I need to be more careful about those behaviors, and also dig deeper to, okay, this is stress related. How can I remove stress, right? We're talking about remove the fundamental causality in terms of, instead of just treating the symptoms, and then have a regimen that can deal with my eating behavior better for my goal. So in summary, your genetics play an important role in your metabolism and weight status. Now, always put that into a situation you live in. And that's how we understand the interplay between the genes and the environment, and become more successful in maneuvering our landscape. There's lots of genes have been well characterized for obesity, and they don't work alone. And I think Hector, our speaker, gonna talk a little bit about that synergy. And we need to understand the gene expression in response to our nutrition sensing, and then in the eating behavior are affecting our body composition. So we need to understand the genetics to better our metabolic health weight journey. So how can we work with but not against our genes is the question. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our guest speaker today, Dr. Hector Gillen. And Hector, are you on?
Hi, I'm on.
Hi, welcome.
Hi.
How are you?
Thank you. Good. Thank you for having me. It's great to have an opportunity to talk to this knowledgeable audience.
Yeah, I see it's a lot of engaging chat already. So yeah, welcome. Sorry, I took a little bit longer because it's a very interesting, hopefully, story to you too. But yeah, you take away and please tell us all about yourself, and then what kind of perspectives you want to share with us on weight management.
Sounds good. Yeah, to protect people's time, I'll kind of don't spend too much on my background. I'm a biochemist by training. I got my PhD from the University of Notre Dame, working in the Keck Center for Transgene Research. And then I did postdoctoral studies in the Medical College of Wisconsin and been in different institutions. Most recently, before I joined GenoPalate, I was a faculty member at the School of Medicine at Wake Forest University, and I was there a member of the Comprehensive Cancer Center and the Center for Precision Medicine. And yeah, now we're here at GenoPalate doing good work. So I want to start talking with a case that was very personal to me and very recent that maybe some of you will relate to this. And these are my results from the app for my vitamin D trait. And you can see here on the left that the amount that is recommended to me and the amount that is recommended to the average population, right? So it's a higher one for me. And so if I scroll down in that page, I get to the genes that affect this trait. And so you can see there they have a little green icon. That means that those variants affect my recommendation. And if I were to click on that first variant, the CYP2R1, it would open this window on the right, and it will tell me that, well, 42% of the population shares this genotype, and that this variant is linked to lower blood levels of vitamin D than other genotypes, right? And so that's my genetic result. If we dive a little bit deeper on this gene, and when we have variants in our genome, there's different kind of variants, right? There's some that are in the coding sequence. That means that that's what is going to build a protein that we're made of. And that can change an amino acid. And so you can see that the form of the protein is going to change if we switch all of a sudden one of the amino acids. Or you can have a stop codon that is premature, and that means that the protein is going to be shorter, and so obviously it's not going to work properly. In this case, this is in the promoter region. And what that means is that it affects the gene expression. So the protein itself is going to be fine, but it's probably not going to be at high levels of expression, meaning that I'm going to have fewer copies of the protein in my liver. And what this protein does is a very simple function. The name is it's a member of the cytochrome P450 family. But what it does is it hydroxylates at the position 25 of vitamin D. And that just is adding a small hydroxy group in position 25. And so it's not a big change, but this change is necessary for our body to, in the vitamin D receptors, to actually recognize and utilize vitamin D for all the good things it does. There's other hydroxylates, mostly in the kidney, that add other hydroxyl groups, and then it can function in several of the different properties that is needed in the body. Vitamin D is one of those peculiar vitamins that there's not many natural sources for it. Mostly it's just fatty fish. Milks historically have been fortified just because there's not many sources in diet. But we can synthesize also vitamin D from sunlight, and so we use our cholesterol as a precursor for it. And so before moving on, I want to pull on the poll and ask you if you have ever been tested for blood vitamin D levels. And I don't know, Sherry, if you have a guess of like what the answer is going to be. I have my guess that it's going to be a bit low, but I don't know. What do you think?
My guess will be less than 10% of us have done that.
Yeah, I also will think it's a bit low.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, results are coming in. All right, no, it's so it's not that low. So the result here we asked the options was yes once, yes multiple times, or never. Actually, the never is only 17%, which I find surprising. I thought the never was going to be a lot higher. So
I'm very happy to see that.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is good. It might be that our audience is a lot more self-conscious, right? But 64% said yes multiple times, and 17% said yes once. So a lot of you. So I can share with you that for me, it's the first time that I had been tested for vitamin D, and I went to my checkup this year, and I wanted to get all analyzed as much as possible for my blood chemistry, right? And I negotiated with my doctor because this was not in the initial analysis. I had cholesterol, sugar, and red blood cell counts and stuff like that. But I asked my doctor, I actually would like to also get some vitamins, and vitamin D was one of the ones I was interested in. And so like, fine, we'll do this one. It's easy enough. And lo and behold, yeah, my result came pretty low, and that's somewhat consistent with the results from my genetic recommendations.
Very interesting. I wish we have this as a routine wellness check,
Yeah.
Like every year, the ones that pay for by our insurance, or just always have this because it's so important. Oh, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, this could be like a friendly criticism to the healthcare systems, right? That we don't really tend to look in the healthcare system to nutrition. And I don't want to paint everybody with a broad stroke. There's some outlier doctors that are very conscious about it, but there's few things that are going to be as impactful on our health as the food we put in our mouth, right? And that's not something you usually talk with your doctor. They ask about if you smoke or if you drink, but I've never had a doctor ask me, what am I eating, right? Or looking at my vitamins out of preventive care. But it's very important to see if you're eating properly and if you're getting all the nutrients you need. And so, yeah, I was low, and I was prescribed high dose vitamin D, and that was it, right? And so if we go to our page in our app, we tell you a little bit about vitamin D, what it does, and what's important for. This is important for bone health, and this is because it's crucial for the absorption of calcium. So if you have low vitamin D levels, even if you're getting enough calcium, you're not going to be absorbing properly, and so your bones might suffer. Muscle function, immune system, and this is also very important, right? Some of you might remember during COVID, there were some associations of worse outcomes for people that had lower vitamin D levels. And that doesn't mean that everybody with vitamin D levels is going to have these outcomes. Same as with the genetic trait. If you share my genotype, that does not mean that you're going to have low vitamin D levels. It's just the likelihood is higher. And as I mentioned, it's a very interesting thing with vitamin D that we can synthesize it with exposure to the sun. And this is a leading theory for how skin color evolves, right? And you can imagine if you move north from Africa, you get to places where the sun is not as abundant. So all of a sudden, you're not synthesizing as much vitamin D. And so there's an evolutionary advantage if your skin starts becoming lighter, because then the sun rays make it through the skin and you can synthesize more vitamin D. But on the flip side, if you're fair skin and you go to a place where there's a lot of sun, then your folate starts degrading. Obviously, folate, there's more sources in diet, so folate deficiency is not such big of a deal. But you have this balance where it depends where you live, the skin color is going to be favorable for these two nutrients.
Yeah, I never pay attention to this dual nutrients dynamics until you draw my attention to that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And so if with the vitamin D, something to keep in mind is that vitamin D deficiency is very common in the US. Actually, 42% of Americans have vitamin D deficiency. And this goes up for Hispanics and for African Americans, which makes sense, right? If you have dark skin and you live in a place like Wisconsin, where in the winter, even if there's sun, you're going to cover every inch of your skin. You're not going to be able to synthesize much yourself. And so you're affected more or become more dependent on getting vitamin D through diet or supplementation. So for Hispanics, vitamin D deficiency is over 60%, and for African Americans is over 80%, so quite significant.
Wow.
So yeah, took 3 months vitamin D high dose, and now I'm back to normal now. And then I can say that I have a dog, so this was in the summer when I was low, so I would walk in the sun every day. I thought I was getting enough. I eat milk products every day that are fortified with vitamin D, but no, it was not enough. So from now on, I know that it's better for me to supplement with vitamin D.
Can I ask you how often now you experience that? We have a lot of very, intelligent audiences today. Holly shared that functional doctors. Yeah, we work. I know quite a few of them. They routinely check them. I just wish our regular doctors, family physicians paid for the insurance will all cover that. But so my question is, how often you think we should recommend a checkup for vitamin D level in the blood?
It depends. I think if you're doing fine, if you live in a place like us, like Wisconsin, it would be good to get a summer checkup and a winter checkup, right? Mm-hmm. Because those values might change quite a bit. But if you're doing fine, probably once a year or twice a year would be plenty. If your vitamins are low, then you should address that and check more often, like I did every 3 months, to make sure that you're getting back to where you need to be.
Yeah, especially the first time when you establish that baseline, probably do a 90 days intervention and post checkup.
Yeah, but I can say that because of where we stand, even if we did one of these analyses for vitamins and minerals every 5 years, that would be a win, right? Because most of us don't even do that.
Yeah, thank you.
And I want to switch gears quickly to go again to weight topic. And I stole this from one of your slides, Sherry, that you've presented before, but I like it a lot, right? And it talks to what you were saying before, that it's very important to, when we're looking at health, to understand that there's a genetic component to it, and there's a big environmental component to it, which includes the behavioral part, right? And obesity and overweight is not an exception to it. So you can have genes that make your weight struggles more difficult or help you with it, right? But there's a whole other sector of what kind of healthcare you have, your social setting, your actual environment, and then the behavior you do. So it's like a combination of both. And hopefully something that I can convey here is that if you understand a little bit your genetics, that can guide your behavior to be more effective, right? That you just not have to do full trial and error with your behavior, trying to do everything, and some things working and some doesn't. Knowing your genetics, you can be a bit more targeted. And so Sherry showed early in a slide how incredibly long our genetic code is. But when we finished coding the genome in the early 2000s, actually it was a surprise for the scientific community how few genes we had. We were expecting a lot more genes to be in the genome. It was only a bit over 20,000 genes. And something for you to visualize this increasing complexity of the genome is you can think of our genome as a blueprint for a house, right? And so every gene is a house. And then once we're going to send it for production, in the body, we go through a method called transcription, and that's where we create messenger RNA. This basically is to take that gene and send it for production to produce the proteins. But there's a thing known as alternative splicing, where these blueprints can change a little bit. And so if we stay with the analogy of the house, you can imagine that well, I don't want the garage on the right side, I want it on the left side, or I want the master bedroom to have the attached bathroom. Well, small changes like that you can still use the blueprint, right? And then we have the levels of expression. So you can send one of these houses to build, or you can send 1,000 houses to build. And then on top of that, once we produce the proteins, there is such a thing as post-translational modifications, that where we add little moieties like sugars or lipids or other things that are going to change a little bit the functionality of these proteins. And all of a sudden, we have over 1 million different proteins. And the reason I bring this up is to show that it matters where you start with the genome, but it's all the environment and all the behavior we do is going to have a strong effect to where we end. So it's not all behavior, and it's all not genetics. They're always interacting.
And also, I just want to interject here, added a point where, especially I just shared that gene story. When I shared that, I was focused on obesity model, but I realizing it's actually a very good example for the genetics underlying our behavior as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if we go back to our report, and we can focus now on which genes are in the report that are going to affect weight. And not surprisingly, most of them are on the macronutrient side. So your macronutrients are going to be your proteins, your fats, and your carbs. Pretty much everything you eat is going to fall in one of these three categories. And so we have genetic variants that, for instance, in FTO, if you have that variant, you benefit from a diet high in carbohydrates to decrease obesity risk. Similar one with a different variant, the same gene for fiber. For protein, better fat distribution if you increase the amount of protein. And then for fats, we have a lot of different variants. So we have these first three variants that favor a diet low in fats to decrease obesity risk and weight. And this one in red has the opposite effect, where if you have that variant, then diet higher in fats is favorable. Saturated fat, usually it's a good advice to lower saturated fat, but people with this variant in the LEPR gene see a higher effect. When they eat high saturated fat, the obesity risk increases. And so on, also omega-3, omega-6, there's some variants that favor higher amount of these healthy fats. And finally, also with monosaturated fatty acids. We do have one trait, vitamin E, where this gene favors waist circumference. When you eat a high amount of vitamin E, waist circumference tends to go down. And so you can find all these variants in your report, and we'll probably prepare a handout to spell this out a little more, so in your own time you can navigate a little bit through it if you feel like it.
Yeah, this is really helpful. Before you show me how you organize your view of our same reports, I have mine, you have yours, but and we focus a lot about, because our customers say, at the end of the day, tell me what to eat, right? So we focus on food a lot, and then we try to integrate all these insights into the simple recommendations of, is kiwi better than raspberry for Sherry, which is very important for talking about food behavior. But when we talk about the whys and the purpose of this series, understanding our biology better, and I think it's a different organized view like this, almost like a weight report, right? We don't have it yet, but I really applaud how you organize your own insights for yourself. So thank you for doing something like that for all of our customers tuning in today.
Yeah, of course. And right now we're focusing on weight. Obviously, many of our customers, that's a primary concern. But we have variants like this as well, affecting blood sugar or cholesterol levels, high blood pressure. And so perhaps in the future we can do other webinars when we focus on some of those other health outcomes.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
And so continuing on this, if we dive in a little bit deeper on the total carbohydrates for the FTO gene, the one that is highlighted in yellow, if we click on that gene, this is my genotype, right? And there was a question, I think, last session that somebody wanted to know, how can I use my genetics to choose a diet? And I'll hide my video so you can see here this paragraph, right? But if I have this genotype shared with 41% of the population, it tells me higher body mass index when on a low carbohydrate diet, right? So if weight is a concern, I shouldn't be in a low carbohydrate diet. Thankfully, I've always liked fruits, and so I tend to eat those carbohydrates that are they tend to go for a diet that is higher in carbohydrates.
Hector, did we lose you? Can someone in the audience help me? Can you hear Hector or me?
Can you hear me?
You're back. Thank you.
Okay.
We're like, oh, we lost you. Thank you. Thank you for.
So yeah, I was talking about a ketogenic diet, and basically what it does is that usually we take our energy from carbohydrates. From glucose is the most efficient way for the body to get energy, and so it's only going to do this ketosis process when there's not enough carbohydrates. So we have to force the body to do that. And to do so, we have to decrease tenfold the amount of carbohydrates we're eating. So a lot of people that are actually following a ketogenic diet, it's not really a ketogenic diet. It's mostly a low carb diet, right? And with ketosis, instead of using glucose, we use these ketone bodies. But if I hide myself here, highlighted in orange, right? The problem is that if you think of some of these carbohydrates, if you're doing the keto diet, you think, well, maybe I'll eat avocado, that it's rich in healthy fats, but that alone already has like 15 grams of carbohydrates. And to stay within this range, you have to keep your carbohydrate intake below 20 to 50 grams. So it's not a lot. I mean, you have to limit yourself in eating legumes that are extremely healthy, right? And beans probably already have all your allotment for the day for carbohydrates. And so, again, it's a personal decision if you decide to go with a diet like this. But in some cases, like in mine, my genetics are not conducive to follow this diet. I'm better off with a diet rich in healthy carbohydrates. And so if we go a little bit deeper with this gene, this is based on a study that was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, of a study done in Sweden where close to 5,000 participants. And so I remember I show you that my genotype is AT. So here I would be the gray bar. And what this is showing is that if I eat a diet high in fat, my obesity risk increases compared to the white bars, right? Or compared to those that are in my same genotype that are eating low fat. And the opposite for carbohydrates. If I eat a diet low in carbohydrates, the risk for me gaining weight is it's higher. So my genetics don't kind of support me trying a keto diet. And again, it's not a diet I would endorse. We'll talk a little bit more about it. But if it works for you, that's great. We're all different, and different diets work for different people. I do want to spend some time on this. I think this is very important to understand. We've had some users that don't like to hear that they have to eat a lot of carbohydrates. And when we talk about carbohydrates, the picture on the right is what a lot of people think, right? It's like all this white bread and cookies, soda, pasta. But the picture on the left, those are also carbohydrates. And so you can think of, if you take the products on the left, process them, deplete them of fiber and nutrients, and concentrate the sugar, you end up with the products on the right. And so if you decrease the amount of carbohydrates on the right, no matter what you call that diet, you're probably going to see a beneficial effects. Those are the ones that are calorie rich and nutrient poor foods. So those are not really great. That doesn't mean you have to cut them all together. You can always have some, but if you decrease the amount, you're probably going to see benefits. What I'm more concerned is if you start cutting the products on the left, because there's a lot of good nutrients there. It's a lot of good fiber that's going to keep your microbiome healthy and happy, which is very important for our health, not only digestion, but all sorts of health. And so there's here several different diets, additional diets that are popular. And so the low carb diet, which would be like a mild version of the keto diet where you don't enter ketosis. Again, if you're cutting those unhealthy carbohydrates, is great. But if you start cutting fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, then you might have some deficiencies. First and foremost, fiber. And as I showed, we have traits for that and genes for that, right? So you want to check those out to make sure that you're not hurting yourself. You might have low levels of folate, vitamin E, A, vitamin C, K, magnesium. For most of this, we have traits in the report, so you may want to look at those. If you go the other way for a low-fat diet, then you might be not getting enough polyunsaturated fatty acids like omega-3 and omega-6. As I mentioned, those also we have traits, some of them affecting weight. Monounsaturated fatty acids, you might be also falling low, vitamin D. And then another diet that has been somewhat popular is the paleo diet. And so the very good thing that the paleo diet has for is that they try to go for more whole foods, right? Stay away from all these ultra processed foods. And so that's going to be a good advice regardless of what you call that diet. Something to look out for the paleo diet is that they also recommend staying away from grains and legumes, where that might be a problem, right? I see legumes as superfoods. They're loaded with protein, they're loaded with fiber, and they're loaded with great nutrients. And so you would have a hard time convincing me that doubling the amount of steak you're eating is going to be better than getting protein from beans or something like that. And so if you're cutting dairy products and stuff like that, you might also suffer getting low levels of calcium, vitamin D, B vitamins. And so if that's a direction you want to take, it's good to make sure you're getting those nutrients, and if not, to supplement. And in many of these diets, you also want to look out for saturated fat, right? And here in the paleo diet, if you start eating more animal products to make up for all the grains and legumes you're missing out, then your saturated fat might be going up, and that cholesterol might follow. So yeah, if you want to, Sherry, I'll pass it back to you.
Oh yeah, just before that, well, thank you so much for those insights, especially showing us how do you utilize your genetics insights for your nutritional choices. And I don't think I heard you say that today, but I think last time we discussed this topic, I was so impressed by your notion about today's food environment, nutrition, and healthy eating environment is too restrictive overall, right? Don't do this, don't do that. those are a lot of them are a good advice based on evidence and reality and practicality considerations, I should say. But at the end of the day, I think we should really focus on what our bodies need, focus on what we should eat, and make it holistic, make it balanced, and make it healthy.
That's a great point, right? Because when I was talking about the unhealthy carbohydrates, so you don't have to go and block them entirely from your diet, but instead of that, it's like, am I eating enough servings of fruit, right? So go for the apple. Am I eating enough legumes? So go for the servings of lentils. Enough grains or stuff like that, where you focus on eating those foods that are going to give you a lot, that are nutrient rich. And then just by displacement, you might not eat as much of the milk chocolate, or instead of a full bag of chips, just half bag of chips, right? There's a lot of good foods there. And I read an article once where it's like we should try to eat at least 30 different plant foods per week, right? It sounds like a lot, but it's not. But that variety on plants is really important, because even when you rely on some vitamins or whatnot, it will help you with immediate needs, but it's not gonna make up for all the things that you will miss out if you don't try to eat more fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, love it. Thank you. Stay there, don't go away. But if you want to remove the camera so everybody can see the text a little bit better, thank you. And then don't go away, Hector, so we can address some of the questions our customers have coming in. So I'm not gonna repeat. I think over again. I hope you have developed your point of view of genetics, and how do you leverage your unique genetics to a successful outcomes for weight and more wellness issues. Gene expression is your genes express very differently when we put them in a different situation, right? I keep coming back to this. There's no bad genes. There's a bad situation we created. You can change. So let's work on that. Then we know, and I can show you over again, we know when you exercise, your gene expression changes, and the genotype that we service you to get insights in, will situate you differently for what kind of gene expression you're going to be, and what kind of eventually the health outcomes you're going to be. And the epigenomics and markers, they change all the time after 20 minutes of exercise, or eating, drinking alcohol, for example. So just always think about your gene expression, leveraging your genetic genotype for that. And I think with everything we can offer today, and we're going to continue learning about it, is consider a smart eating plan that is tailored to your beautifully unique genetics. Secondly is I have a weight issue all the time. So last time we asked everybody how often you think about losing weight. I'm with the 57% of you saying all the time. It's something I always have it. I have my whole generational story behind it, and my mom's story and so on. Even I have a healthy weight today. I always have a healthy weight, but I always want to lose weight to be more vibrant, and there's nothing wrong with it, right? So I think a lot of you share that mentality, and it's very, very good. It's actually going to help you stay young from the aging evidence we see now. So always develop a method, not a plan, not that I have to reach a goal, I have to reach 8 pounds, 20 pounds, 30 pounds by when. I don't operate that way. It never worked for me. What really works for me is leveraging all these tools that works for me from science, from more important, my practice that works, and put them into my pocket or toolkit, so I can put them out in different situations that I know might be effective for me. That's my way, and tell me how does it work for you. So yeah, finally we got to thank you for listening, and thank you so much, Hector, for your really great lecture and knowledge sharing and insights for how we apply. So we have some really good questions. Julie asked us, so she actually is taking GenoPalate provided vitamin, which she shared is as 1,000 IU of D3. Is that enough? Do you want to, I believe that's adequate. Do you want to comment on this one?
Yeah, I think 1,000 IU is enough. With the vitamins we sell, if you have a trade for more need for vitamin D, and if we ask you right before you purchase those if you're kind of eating enough fish products and the main sources for vitamin D. And so if you're not, we bump that even more, right, to make up for your increased needs. But yeah, I think 1,000 IU every day would work. If that's a concern, again, once a year to kind of test it, and if you live in a northern state, especially in the winter, to make sure that you don't have those fluctuations that are normal in this part of the country.
Yeah, get that checked for sure. I think also from Julie is, where in the app do we find where you showed you should be low in carb diet? That's through our homepage in my app, and then you can enter from that portal, right?
Yeah. So if you go to your homepage, you're gonna have the macros subsection, and then if you go that, you have the carbohydrates, and within carbohydrates you have total carbohydrate. So you're gonna have there the recommendation that says in general, if it tells you that you need more a diet higher in carbohydrates. But you can go down and see all the genes that impact that trait and see what the impact is for each of those genes, right? Because you might find some observations that are more meaningful to you than others, and so you can take that into consideration. Because obviously our algorithm takes all those variants into account.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then again, we're going to share a kind of a guide from you. How do we, a roadmap of how you navigate further, just focus on the weight. And Julie, please pay attention to that when we send it out within a week. Hopefully that will be helpful. But reach out if, we can help more. And member Paul just shared, thank you for sharing, Paul, your experience of using checkup and also establish your vitamin D before, after. And then I'm glad to hear you're no longer low on vitamin D with the intervention and also the test. Question from Holly: where do you see the future for genetics, especially weight management, going in the future? Wow, it's a good big question. Hector, you want to take on, or maybe a supplement?
Yeah, I mean, I really hope it starts getting incorporated more, right? As a society, we've been very ignorant when it comes to weight, where it's like we throw all the fault on the individual that you're eating too much and you're not exercising enough. Well, Sherry and I can tell you that that's completely false, right? That there's a lot more to it. And we only included it here for the report variants that are actionable, where you can do something about your diet to affect your weight. But there's also other variants that just make it harder for people to actually lose weight, right? That's a genetic where you're going to struggle more than the next person. And I think that's all this information is important for health providers to have it, to guide you more through it. And if you have something like genetics to help you make those decisions, it's also going to be a less frustrating journey, right? That is a lot of trial and error where you try 5 things and only one kind of worked. Well, it's a lot better if you start with just one thing and kind of works and keep going and find sustainable things to change.
Yeah, there's a lot of waste energy when we don't know, which we could know, right? That's the whole vision of GenoPalate, is to give the early access to science-driven people, folks like exactly our audience, demonstrated today, highly educated, believe in science, believe in we can change our fate for health, give that access to that genetic and then more insights. So to Holly, we can talk all day long, happy to, but my take on is for the future of genetics, I just comment on that one, on top of what Hector shared. I think everybody should we should implement newborn screening with genome sequencing, whole genome sequencing from day one, period, for everybody going forward. And then that future is coming. I think the first genome sequencing cost global society $2.7 billion, more than 10 years, and take another decade to really understand and put all these, references together. But now we have it. We have a very robust tool. We have really sensitive machinery to genome sequencing all of our genomes. All those 3.2 billion letters we can find out today with very good quality. And I think the pricing is still not affordable as a newborn screening that paid by the government, paid by our insurance companies. For our wellness plan. But I think in 5 years, that reality gonna be changed to better. When we come down to less of $100, good quality sequencing, and that future is here. So I would like to see that's become implemented. There's some countries already implemented that. Smaller nation like Iceland, right? Mm-hmm. They sequence all their newborn babies. It's a routine. It's something just everybody should have right and have access to. Leveraging that for different rare diseases. We talk about monogenic. We talk about trisomy 21. All these things will be Down syndrome. Of course, we have a much better job of screening them, but we're still missing a lot of opportunities. And there are nutritional variants in babies that you can just easily change, intervene early enough so it doesn't have consequences throughout the development of brain and the body, but it's simply just supplement a certain nutrient that the body cannot make from genetic pool, right? So things like that, it just pains me that we still are missing a lot of opportunities. So thank you, Holly, for your feedback. All right. I think, we're at time. Thank you very much, Hector. It's always a pleasure to talk to you about our topic. And I just want to quickly, for all of you still staying with us, most of you are, thank you for your time and engagement. So we're going to, after the webinar, always want to leave something behind and handouts as we can see how useful that, Dr. Gillen's guide for how to navigate in your GenoPalate app going to be. So we're going to share the recap of this recording. So you have all these stack and all our narratives. And we're going to have that toolkit, send it to you. And I will take on as my promise to you. I'm going to put down a list, my full list. It's not comprehensive list of the world, but it's my list of nutrients, of foods, and way of eating that I think, going to be helpful for your weight management if it comes down to weight loss mostly. And then some, to help you remember what we talk about for your own benefits. And we're going to have a one-pager again so that you can talk smart about, the genomes and the health and obesity stuff, if you like that. And just I want to remind you, after the holiday season, we're going to regroup here. I would love to see all of you come again. on January 3rd in 2024. Oh my God, time flies. So I would like to see you in New Year. We'll talk about very interesting aspects of weight management, the effects of circadian rhythms. So thank you very much. And this is the end of today's live session. I appreciate you spending time with us and your questions, engagements. We'll follow up with you. If you have any comments and help this community build stronger, please email us at bewell@genopalate.com, and I will reply personally. And so yeah, I'm your host and Dr. E. Sherry Zhang. Thank you again, our guest, and Dr. Gillen. This is GenoPalate. See you next time. Be well.
Thank you, everybody.